Your net worth is $4.1 million. Your mother called last Thursday to ask if you needed money. Not because something happened, not because you mentioned anything, just because she noticed your car is 7 years old and you haven't taken a vacation in 2 years, and the last time you came home for Christmas, you wore the same jacket you wore the year before. So she called. She offered quietly, the way she does, with a careful softness that told you she'd been thinking about it for a while. You said you were fine. She didn't fully believe you, and the strange part, the part you've never figured out how to explain, is that you didn't correct her. Not really. You let it sit there between you on the phone, this assumption that you were just getting by? Because explaining the truth would require a conversation you're not sure either of you is ready for. This is what $4 million actually looks like from the outside. It looks like nothing. It starts in your late 20s. Not with a plan, not with a mentor or a revelation or a moment that felt like anything other than a quiet Tuesday when you decided, for no dramatic reason, to stop spending money on things you didn't actually need. You were 26, making $54,000 a year at a mid-size logistics company in a city that wasn't cheap but wasn't expensive either. One-bedroom apartment, $970 a month, car payment, $340, student loans that came out automatically so you didn't have to think about them. After everything cleared, you had about $400 left, sometimes $600 if you were careful. You weren't saving anything real. What changed wasn't a book or a podcast or a conversation. It was a Sunday afternoon when you sat down with a notebook and actually wrote out every dollar, not a budget in the aspirational sense. Just a list. What comes in? What goes out? What's left? The number left was $400. You looked at it for a long time. $400 a month wasn't going to build anything. Not at the rate you were going. Not with the raises you could reasonably expect, and the life you were slowly inflating to match each one. You'd watched it happen already, the first real paycheck, the apartment upgrade that felt earned, the car that was more reliable, the groceries that shifted from whatever was cheapest to whatever you actually wanted. None of it felt like overspending. All of it was. You made one decision that Sunday: not to invest more, not to start a business, just to stop. Stop upgrading, stop letting the lifestyle expand. Keep the apartment, keep the car. Keep everything exactly where it was, and redirect every raise, every bonus, every extra dollar directly into accounts that were not your checking account. The first year you saved $8,400. It felt like almost nothing. You put $6,000 into a Roth IRA you'd had for 2 years but barely touched, maxed it for the first time, and put the rest in a high-yield savings account paying 4.2% that a coworker had mentioned once in passing and you'd actually looked up that same night. He never knew you did that. He'd probably forgotten he said it. Your family noticed the car wasn't changing. Your sister asked if everything was okay at work. You said yes. Everything was fine. At 29, you got a promotion. $72,000. The number felt significant for about 3 days. Then you did the math and moved on. You did not upgrade the apartment. You did not get the car. You increased your 401k contribution to the legal maximum and opened a taxable brokerage account with the remainder. You bought index funds. Not because you'd done deep research. Because you'd read enough to understand that you didn't know enough to pick individual stocks and that the cost of being wrong was greater than the cost of being boring. So you were boring every month the same amount into the same funds, regardless of what the market was doing, regardless of what your coworkers thought about which sectors were positioned for the next quarter. You listened to those conversations. You nodded. You said nothing. Your portfolio had no opinions. It just compounded. By 31, your net worth crossed $100,000 for the first time. You were in the cereal aisle at the grocery store when you checked your phone and saw the number. You stood there for a moment. You put the phone back in your pocket. You got the store brand cereal. You went home. Nobody knew. Your family's mental model of you was set somewhere around age 24. That's the version they keep updating in small ways, but never fully revising. In their picture, you're doing okay, but not great. Responsible, but not wealthy. The one who always thinks twice before a big purchase. Who drives the same car too long. Who doesn't talk about money because there isn't much interesting to say. They're not wrong about the car. They're not wrong about the vacations. What they're wrong about is the conclusion. The car isn't old because you can't afford a new one. It's old because the depreciation curve on a 3-year-old vehicle costs you somewhere between $4,000 and $7,000 the moment you drive it off the lot. And that $4,000 to $7,000 invested at the return you've historically averaged over 12 years compounds into something that makes the new car smell significantly less interesting. You know how that sounds. You've thought about that too. At 33, something happened that nobody in your family knows about. You had $180,000 in liquid investable assets, not including retirement accounts, just the taxable brokerage and the savings buffer. And a contact from a previous job reached out about a small commercial property, 3 retail units in a mid-sized town 2 hours away, 1 tenant, 2 vacant, asking price $310,000. The cap rate, if you could fill the vacant units, was somewhere between 7% and 9%. You drove out on a Saturday morning, walked the space, talked to the one existing tenant, a dry cleaner who'd been there for 11 years and had no intention of leaving. Watched the foot traffic for an hour, looked at the surrounding block, drove home. You made an offer. You put down $78,000, a significant portion of everything you had outside the retirement accounts, and financed the rest. The mortgage payment came to $1,680 a month. The dry cleaner alone covered $1,400 of it. You found a second tenant 6 months later. A small insurance office willing to pay $1,100 a month. The property covered its own debt within the year. Within 3 years, it was generating $820 a month, net after taxes, after maintenance reserves, after the property manager you eventually hired, because the 2-hour drive both ways was cutting into things you'd rather be doing. You did not tell your family, not because you were hiding it, just because there was no natural moment. I bought a commercial property. Wasn't a sentence that dropped easily into a Sunday dinner, and the longer you waited, the more the window closed. And then it was just gone. A fact that existed in your life, but not in the shared version of your life. At 36, you bought a second property. Smaller, residential this time. A duplex in a neighborhood that was undervalued in ways you'd spent 6 months researching before you moved. The numbers were tighter, but the fundamentals were sound. Both units rented within 3 weeks. At 38, the first property had appreciated enough that the equity position, combined with the brokerage account and the retirement assets, pushed your total net worth past $1 million. You were at a Tuesday afternoon meeting when you checked during a break. You put the phone face down on the table and rejoined the meeting. Your mother called the same week to see if you were eating properly. She'd read something about men in their late 30s who live alone. You told her you were fine. You made a joke about the cereal. She laughed. She said she worried about you sometimes. You said she didn't need to. She said she always had and she always would, and that was just how it worked. What nobody tells you about building money quietly is that the silence compounds the same way the money does. Every year that passes without the conversation makes the conversation harder. Not because anyone would be angry. You've turned this over many times and you genuinely don't think they would be. But because the gap between their version of you and the actual version has grown wide enough now that correcting it feels like something, like a reveal. And reveals carry weight. They rearrange things. They make the people around you recalibrate who they've been dealing with, and that recalibration, however small, changes the texture of things. You've seen it happen to other people. The friend who turns out to have more than anyone assumed, and suddenly the dynamic in the room shifts just slightly, just enough to feel it. Nobody means for it to happen. It just does. So you stay quiet, not forever, but for now. You're 42. The net worth crossed $4 million 14 months ago. The number came from your annual review, not a dramatic moment, just the spreadsheet you've updated every January since you were 27. All assets minus all liabilities. The same formula, same Sunday morning in January with the same mug of coffee. The number landed on the screen and you sat with it. You thought about the Sunday at 26 with the notebook and the $400. You thought about the dry cleaner who's now been in that strip unit for 20 years. You thought about the index funds that absorbed every paycheck increase without opinion, without drama, without requiring anything from you except patience. $4.1 million. You drive a 2017 Honda Accord with 94,000 miles on it. You still buy the store brand cereal. You had dinner with your parents last month. Your father mentioned he'd seen a deal on a used truck, asked if you needed help with a down payment. He said it the way he says things he's been thinking about for a while, carefully, with a kind of casual framing that was doing a lot of work. You told him you appreciated it. You told him the car was fine. He looked at the Accord in the driveway when you left. The way someone looks at something they've been quietly concerned about for longer than they've said. There's a question underneath all of this. Sometimes people ask it out loud. More often you can feel it in the way they look at you, in the gap between what they expect and what they observe. What's the point? If you're not spending it, if nobody knows, if the life from the outside looks like someone who's getting by and not much more, then what exactly have you been building toward? You've spent more time on this question than almost any other. The answer isn't the same as it was at 26. At 26, you were just trying to stop the bleed. To interrupt a pattern you could already see playing out in the people around you. The raises consumed by upgraded lives, the promotions that changed the number but not the feeling, the decade that passed and left everyone more comfortable and no more free. At 31 you were building something, even if you couldn't see its shape clearly. At 38 you understood what you were actually after. It was never the number. It was the weight of the number. Or rather, the absence of weight that arrives once the number is large enough. The way a medical bill stops being an emergency. The way a slow quarter at work doesn't rearrange your nervous system. The way you can make a decision based on what you actually want rather than what you can currently afford to want. That's what $4 million bought you. Not things, not status, not the conversation at the dinner table, just the quiet fact that money no longer manages you. You manage it. Your mother called again last week. Same gentle concern, same careful softness. She'd been talking to your aunt, who mentioned your cousin, 2 years younger, had just bought a new house, a big one, doing really well by all appearances, and she just wanted to check in and make sure you were okay with where things were at, that you weren't too hard on yourself, that you knew there was no race. You listened to the whole thing. You told her things were good, that she didn't need to worry, that you were exactly where you wanted to be. She said she was glad to hear that. She said she'd always believed you'd figure it out. You said thank you, and you meant it. You hung up and sat in the same apartment you've lived in for 9 years. Same furniture, same neighborhood, same view from the window you've looked at through 2 property purchases, 12 annual reviews, and one spreadsheet that now reads $4.1 million distributed across 2 income-producing properties, a fully maxed retirement account, a brokerage portfolio that hasn't needed your attention in years, and a savings buffer that exists purely so nothing ever becomes urgent. The Accord is in the lot downstairs. The cereal is in the cupboard. And not one person in your life, not your mother, not your sister, not your father who offered to help with the down payment, has any idea what the spreadsheet says.